Hi, my name is Matthew and I want to talk about the ending of Dark and quantum mechanics. Dark is a fantastic and extremely intricate German TV show which dabbles in quantum mechanics to explain some of its travel through both dimensions and time. However, they appear to overlook a quantum process which I think beautifully describes the ending. So in this video, I'm going to dig into it. Spoilers ahead, of course. For good reason, quantum mechanics is very popular in the world of sci-fi, with cool terms like the God particle and superposition, multiple realities, and time travel. And if nothing else, you can just add the word quantum to things to make them sound more sciencey.
Quantum energy.
Quantum consciousness.
Quantum signature.
Quantum entanglement.
Quantum spectrometer.
Quantum system.
Quantum flux.
You guys just put the word quantum in front of everything?
Dark tells the tale of the inhabitants of a German town called Winden, and their relationships across not only time, but separate yet linked realities. The characters' relationships are very complex. For example, Charlotte's mother is also her own daughter.
She's my sister and my daughter!
However, the actual mechanics of the time travel are fairly simple. In essence, the knot, as they refer to it, is primarily a fixed timeline loop in which many events have no origin. Characters exist because they exist, and do things because they have to be done in a series of bootstrap paradoxes. Some characters wish to change things, but ultimately they are convinced to either repeat events, their attempts to change them are prevented by the universe itself, or their attempts to change things unknowingly perpetuate the endless cycle. However, there is one loophole to this fixed timeline. At the moment of an apocalyptic event, it is actually possible to change things. Eva refers to this process as quantum entanglement. The main characters, Jonas and Marta, ultimately use this moment to travel to the origin of the entire complex continuum and prevent it from coming into existence. Now, the ending does raise some classic time travel problems, such as the grandfather paradox. If Jonas and Marta stop themselves from being created, then they cannot stop themselves from being created, and therefore have to stop themselves from being created, ad infinitum. But this is not typically an issue in a static or fixed timeline loop, as paradoxical events don't require origins. I have another video where I dig into the various types of time travel timelines and how they create or solve various paradoxes, but in this one I want to sidestep that particular problem and talk about Dark's use of quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics is the science of how matter interacts on the smallest known scale, where we study the things that atoms are made of, subatomic particles.
Ions and pions, muons and gluons, neutrinos, gravitinos.
When you get down to that scale, things get very strange. How strange, you might ask? Well, subatomic particles actually have a mathematical property called strangeness, which can be positive or negative. One of the pioneers of quantum mechanics, Richard Feynman, famously said, "I think I can safely say that nobody understands quantum mechanics." In Dark, Eva refers to the moment where it is possible to break out of the static time loop as
Quantum entanglement.
I have a little bit of a nitpick here, as this is a misuse of the term. Quantum entanglement is a real thing, or at least as real as anything in quantum mechanics is. It refers to an inexplicable connection between two particles that somehow results in changes to one particle affecting the other, even if they are physically separate. Or as Einstein called it, spooky action at a distance. Instead, they appear to be describing superposition. This is yet another inexplicable thing, where a particle appears to be able to exist in two states simultaneously, until it is observed. In popular culture, this is commonly described through the Schrdingers Cat Paradox. An important but often forgotten element of the Schrodinger's cat thought experiment that Dark accurately describes is that the life of the cat is directly connected to the decay of an atom. Like a quantum particle, the cat exists in two states, alive and dead, just like Jonas and Marta. This runs against our common understanding of the world. How can a cat exist in two states until observed? Is the cat itself not an observer? Schrödinger created this thought experiment specifically to poke fun at the prevailing interpretation of quantum mechanics, the Copenhagen interpretation, by creating, in his words, a quite ridiculous case in which the superposition of a subatomic particle, that is, its simultaneous existence in two states, is directly linked to the macroscopic world.
It's dualist bullshit, which is the worst kind of bullshit.
You would prefer
The Everett interpretation.
The Everett interpretation, or the many worlds theory of quantum mechanics, is a more modern theory of quantum mechanics that states that instead of both outcomes simply existing at the same time until observed, every possible outcome does occur, and each time it happens, it creates a new world. However, Dark doesn't have an infinite number of worlds. It has a very finite number, 3. There is Adam's world, in which the older version of Jonas uses time travel in an attempt to destroy the world.
Both worlds will erase one another. Absolute annihilation.
And there is the opposite, Eva's world, in which the older version of Marta uses time travel to preserve the world.
This knot has given us all life, and we are its keepers.
And finally, there is the origin world, from which these two worlds were made.
He divided and destroyed his world and created our two worlds.
So one world split into two opposites. Does something like this occur in quantum mechanics? It turns out it does. It's called pair production. It's not quite as sexy sounding as the God particle or quantum entanglement, but it is pretty amazing. It turns out that a single neutral particle, called a boson, will split into two exactly opposite subatomic particles. This is something that sounds impossible. After all, matter should not be able to be created from nothing. This would violate the laws of physics, specifically conservation of energy. However, since the two particles are exact opposites, one particle and one antiparticle, the sum energy of the system remains exactly the same. And the single neutral particle is basically the same as the two perfectly matched opposites. So matter isn't created from nothing, instead, nothing just temporarily takes a new form. And when two opposite particles come together, they go through a process called annihilation, resulting in the creation of a new particle. This is not only a theory.
It's supported by the math, and it's supported by the experiment.
This creation of particles can be detected by placing two metal plates close together and measuring the pressure on them. Because there is enough space for virtual particles to be produced outside but not between the plates, a tiny but measurable force is exerted. This is called the Casimir force. What's even cooler is that the spontaneous production of particles also happens on a macrocosmic scale. The current dominant theory is that during the Big Bang, a similar form of matter production led to the creation of our entire universe. Judeo-Christian religious texts describe the creation of the universe in the book of Genesis. Science describes the process as baryogenesis, or particle creation. It is theorized that at the moment of baryogenesis, a perfectly equal amount of matter and antimatter came into existence, thus preserving the law of conservation of energy. However, here is where the science requires a little faith too. Instead of all the matter and antimatter coming together again in the process of annihilation, somehow 1 in 5 billion antimatter particles disappeared, which allowed a tiny amount of matter to remain in existence. This tiny amount of matter is the universe as we know it. And no one knows what happened to the antimatter that disappeared. My favorite idea to explain this is that there is a mirror anti-universe, exactly the same as ours except made entirely out of antimatter, and in which time flows backwards. I'm not an expert in quantum physics, so I'm probably bungling this a bit, but I can't get over how perfectly it fits as a metaphor for the ending of Dark. Jonas and Marta's worlds are opposite particles that spontaneously came into existence after the neutral original world is split, just like a particle and its antiparticle are produced from a neutral boson.
You and I, we are the reason that all of this happens.
The paradise that Adam seeks is the destruction or annihilation of their two worlds. When Jonas and Marta come together, that annihilation occurs, just as when two opposite particles come together, recreating the origin world. And since the same process led to the creation of our universe, it ties quite nicely to all the religious creation symbolism that saturates Dark. A time travel explanation might imply that they never existed.
I wonder if anything of us will remain. Or is that what we are? A dream, and we never really existed.
However, if we look at it through quantum mechanics, their coming together merges their two opposite worlds back into the origin world. They continue to exist because the origin world is now made out of them. Martha and Jonas, Adam and Eve.
You and I are perfect for each other. Never believe anything else.
And I can't think of a better match than two perfect opposites that come together to create the entire world. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. That's what YouTube algorithms crave.